listening to LYNC Radio. I'm Jessica Eturralde. Coming up on today's program, trauma healing in a war-torn Ukraine, a call for peace from Doha, and Dr. Dennis Hoover encourages Franz lecture series attendees to deal with diversity differently. All coming up right after this. Want to dive deeper into the world of religious freedom building and helping marginalized communities? Then don't miss our new video program, LYNC Interview.
Every religion is a persecuted minority somewhere.
In every episode, we bring you stories and insights from the experts making a difference.
We like to think about religious persecution as some problem that's over in Asia or the Middle East. It's not in Europe, it's not in America. But here's the simple truth, we're all human.
Join me, Jessica Eturralde, as I sit down with inspiring voices from around the world working in religious freedom building.
The main lesson for mainstream society would be to think twice before assuming that religious radicals are necessarily a problem for social flourishing and stability.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel or visit lyncommunity.org and click on the Media tab.
When we support international religious freedom, we are not just upholding a principle. We are protecting our interests, our security, and our values.
I'm not loving my neighbor unless I love them in a language and logic that they understand.
Catch every episode of LYNC Interview. Get inspired, get involved, and together, let's foster more cohesive and safe societies. LYNC's triad of key initiatives include multi-faith community engagement, fostering religious freedom and social cohesion worldwide, and safeguarding hope for the marginalized. For the latter, in the face of war's lingering impact, LYNC Community's trauma healing program continues to make a profound difference in the lives of Ukrainian children and families. Our 2025 initiative is bringing much-needed psychological support and resilience-building techniques to those affected by displacement, grief, and the invisible scars of conflict. The program, warmly welcomed by communities, is particularly valued by mothers with large families who see it as a lifeline for their children. Many have expressed how difficult it is to access such psychological support independently, making this initiative all the more vital. Teachers, whether from primary schools or Sunday schools, have been key participants, eager to adapt new methods to help children process trauma in a way that traditional techniques no longer can. LYNC's Trauma Healing Project Manager for Ukraine, Oksana Vlasnova, sat down with LYNC CEO Wade Cusack to share the latest updates on the program. On March 1st, Oksana traveled from her home in Germany to launch LYNC's first trauma care training for Sunday school teachers in Ukraine. Considering that every child in Ukraine is affected by trauma to one degree or another, the program equips educators with essential skills to support children in crisis. Led by licensed therapists, the training includes workshops and coursework, culminating in official Children and War certificates in September. Issued by LYNC's Ukrainian partner, these certifications will empower teachers to provide trauma healing techniques. Note that the interview was not initially conducted in English. Wade assisted in translating for us, and we used an artificially generated voice to represent Oksana. Some sensitive information has been blotted out to protect identities.
The trip was wonderful. They welcomed me very warmly and kindly. There were many mothers with large families. They said, well, first of all, we need this program for our own families, as a training program for our children. because there were mothers with 6 children, 4, 3, and they were very grateful for the support they received at this time. Because getting such knowledge now is expensive, and not everyone can afford it at the moment.
We only had teachers from Sunday school, right?
Yes, Sunday school teachers. But there are also teachers who teach 1st and 5th grades. There are Sunday school teachers, but they also undergo psychological training, so they understand what it's about. And the Sunday school teachers said that this is very valuable because right now the background is war, and the methods they knew don't always work with children.
So it turns out that even if children were not directly witnessed the military actions, they are still traumatized by the overall situation. Is that right?
Yes, because as the teacher explained, she said, your child may not hear gunshots, may not see something, may not witness something, but the internet, friends, then internally displaced children. They share their stories, so it's impossible to isolate children, and therefore even indirectly they get exposure through the internet, through stories, from other children. And this program is also designed for healing trauma from bullying, and it works very well too.
And how many displaced children are there?
Well, according to the data, about 30% now.
Quite a large number. Did anyone share any stories, I don't know, maybe psychologists themselves or perhaps...
Yes, there were such interesting stories when children completed this program. And at home, they would tell their parents, sit them down, and apply these techniques on them. And the parents say, what are you doing with our children? Because they are teaching us. And it really helps us in certain moments. Yes. And another woman who has 6 children says, well, apparently she has some family problem. And she says, what I'm hearing now is very important to me. If I had heard this earlier, maybe my family situation wouldn't be what it is now.
This woman, she is a Sunday school teacher.
Yes.
Okay, so she was interested both professionally and personally.
Personally too, yes. Personally too.
Okay. All right. How many people will be trained in total?
Currently, there are 34 people in training.
And how many psychotherapists or rather psychologists are involved?
Well, we have 2 psychologists from the Institute, a therapist, co-therapist, and another one involved in a different group. There's a child psychologist with 16 years of experience, and then there's me, a psychologist. We also brought in from Kiev, who is a counselor and also a psychologist. We took him on for support because everything is so intense, like a bridge, between education and Christian education.
Did you manage to establish any close contact with any of the Sunday school teachers?
Yes. I remember a story about a girl named... In 2023, she lost her husband, who was a soldier. She also relocated and now lives in Chernivtsi. She is originally from Kherson. And she works at a school. And she says, thank you very much for this program, because I am a 3rd grade teacher now, teaching 3rd grade. So she is ready to start working literally next week.
She teaches in Chernivtsi at the school, right? In the 3rd grade.
Yes.
Okay, so she's a certified psychologist too, right?
Yes. She is an elementary school teacher and a psychologist.
Can she do that?
Yes.
Theoretical consultation. Got it.
She said that she went through such a long therapy, and it's very valuable to her now.
How long is the program designed to last?
The program is designed so that we started training in January, and it will end in September, because certification takes time, and there are breaks.
So we will graduate 34 specialists practically.
Yes, but not everyone will have certificates, because the Institute has very stringent requirements.
In any case, they will be prepared.
Yes, they will be prepared. Yes, they will have the tools in hand, because, judging by last year, people are working and offering their, let's say, services in this area.
Great.
The program, which began preparation in January, will run through September, certifying specialists equipped with the tools to continue this vital work. While not all will meet the rigorous certification criteria, every participant will leave with hands-on methods to support their communities, ensuring that healing extends beyond the classroom. As we continue this journey, stories of resilience, transformation, and hope remind us why this work matters. Through education, psychological support, and community engagement, we are helping to rebuild not just individual lives, but also the emotional fabric of a nation. Up next, Dr. Janna Scott, CEO of the American Center for Religious Freedom and former Deputy Director at the Department of Homeland Security, encourages peace from Doha. And with that, now is the perfect time to ask you, are you following us online? We are on Facebook, X, also remembered as Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Of course, you may find us on YouTube under Love Your Neighbor Community and on any major podcast provider, including Apple and Spotify. The second annual Doha International Center for Interfaith Dialogue Conference took place last month in Doha, Qatar. On February 18th through 20th, the event, titled From Religious Freedom to Religious Responsibility, Peacemaking in a Destabilized World, was held under the patronage of His Excellency Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman bin Jassim Al Thani, and in collaboration with the Multi-Faith Neighbors Network. During the conference, attendees explored the role of religions in conflict resolution, peace building, and multi-faith collaboration, emphasizing the collective responsibility of faith communities to foster stability and coexistence. One voice invited to speak at this important event was Dr. Janna Scott. For 8 years, Dr. Scott served in President Obama's administration as Deputy Director, Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships in the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. In that role, Dr. Scott guided the engagement of faith-based and community groups on issues of resilience integration, emergency preparedness and response, countering violent extremism, religious accommodations in Homeland Security, and other issues related to Homeland Security. Dr. Scott is now the CEO of the American Center for Religious Freedom, which promotes multiculturalism and tolerance globally through intercultural dialogue, research, and collaboration. The center fosters joint initiatives that strengthen religious freedom and mutual understanding by partnering with academic institutions, faith leaders, and community organizations. At the conference, Dr. Scott delivered a compelling speech on the vital role of faith in leadership and pursuing peace. Speaking to a multi-faith audience, Dr. Scott emphasized that multi-faith relationships are key to lasting peace. She stressed that faith should not only inspire, but actively move people and nations toward reconciliation.
And rely on God. And number 3, as we're doing this peacemaking, rely on God. It's absolutely a key principle in every one of our faith traditions.
Drawing from sacred texts across Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, Dr. Scott highlighted the Spirit as a guiding force in peacemaking and laid out 8 core principles to build a foundation for sustainable peace, including remembering shared humanity, revealing truth, pursuing reconciliation, and taking tangible action. Dr. Scott emphasized the importance of helping young people restore hope within their communities, highlighting the need to rely on God rather than personal understanding. She pointed to key moments in various faith traditions: Jesus in the garden, Prophet Muhammad's first revelation, and Abraham leaving his homeland, as examples of trusting in divine guidance, a principle central to all faiths in attendance. Dr. Scott concluded her speech by calling on government leaders to legislate in ways that promote peace. She urged grassroots communities to practice peace daily and encouraged faith leaders to use their voices to challenge injustice. Her message was clear: true peacemaking requires faith, action, and cross-religious collaboration. A powerful call to action from Dr. Janna Scott, reminding us that faith can do more than inspire. It can transform. Recently, Dr. Scott expounded on this through a blog that she wrote for Love Your Neighbor Community. You may read that blog at lyncommunity.org or check out our social media, where we have included a link. Additionally, we'll include a link to that blog in our show notes. Next, Dr. Dennis Hoover encourages Franz lecture series attendees at Gordon College to deal with diversity differently, right after this. Want to dive deeper into the world of religious freedom building and helping marginalized communities? Then don't miss our new video program, LYNC Interview.
Every religion is a persecuted minority somewhere.
In every episode, we bring you stories and insights from the experts making a difference.
We like to think about religious persecution as some problem that's over in Asia or the Middle East. It's not in Europe, it's not in America. But here's the simple truth: we're all human.
Join me, Jessica Eturralde, as I sit down with inspiring voices from around the world working in religious freedom building.
The main lesson for mainstream society would be to think twice before assuming that religious radicals are necessarily a problem for social flourishing and stability.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel or visit lyncommunity.org and click on the Media tab.
When we support international religious freedom, we are not just upholding a principle. We are protecting our interests, our security, and our values.
I'm not loving my neighbor unless I love them in a language and logic that they understand.
Catch every episode of LYNC Interview. Get inspired, get involved, and together, let's foster more cohesive and safe societies. The Franz Lecture Series, ran by the Center for Faith and Inquiry at Gordon College in Massachusetts, was established in 1992 and named after historian David Franz. The annual lecture features a keynote speaker, and this year, LYNC Senior Fellow Dr. Dennis Hoover, who is also a Senior Fellow at the Institute for Global Engagement, delivered this year's special lesson on March 4th. In his talk, Dr. Hoover introduced Covenantal Pluralism, which emphasizes religious freedom, cross-cultural religious literacy, and character virtues like humility and reciprocity as essential to fostering mutual respect and cooperation. Covenantal pluralism is a philosophical, practical, and positive engagement frame with 3 enabling conditions. Those conditions are: Number 1, freedom of religion or belief, ensuring individuals and communities can practice their faith freely. The second condition is character development, which focuses on fostering individual virtues like respect, humility, and curiosity. And lastly, the third condition is engagement, actively building relationships across deep differences. Dr. Hoover highlighted the global challenges of religious conflict, the pitfalls of secular liberalism to unify societies, and the increasing need for a new model of coexistence beyond fundamentalism and relativism.
Reaching beyond bumper sticker cliches of tolerance, covenantal pluralism calls for a holistic combination of positive conditions from the top down, meaning government policies, and from the bottom up, meaning social and cultural norms and practices. Covenantal pluralism seeks both a constitutional order of equal rights and responsibilities and a culture of reciprocal commitment to engaging, respecting, and protecting the religious other.
Using examples from global policy research, Amish communities in the U.S., and multi-faith initiatives, Hoover illustrated successful models of covenantal pluralism in action. He argued that fostering pluralism requires both top-down government policies and bottom-up social engagement, urging individuals to build genuine relationships across religious divides. According to Dr. Hoover, one of the most frequently asked questions about covenantal pluralism is, why covenantal? He emphasized that this specific term is intentional as it conveys a deeper, more relational approach to pluralism, one that extends beyond mere rules for governing diversity and instead fosters enduring commitments and moral responsibility across differences.
In our experience, leading with the word covenantal is helpful because it signals from the outset that what we're talking about is something richer and more relational than just a set of rules for governing diversity. A pluralism that is covenantal is characterized not only by rules, as important as those are, but also by relationships. Here, the contrast between the words contractual and covenantal is helpful.
Dr. Hoover described contractual pluralism as purely transactional and temporary, based on conditional agreements governed by rules that, if violated, dissolve the relationship. In contrast, covenantal pluralism carries a deeper moral significance, fostering long-term commitment that endures beyond conflicts and deviations from norms. It balances rules with grace, creating a more fluid and resilient framework for engagement across differences. Furthermore, Dr. Hoover explained that the term covenant signifies a deeper sense of solidarity across differences, one that goes beyond mere tolerance to foster lasting commitment and mutual respect.
Another way of saying this is that the word covenant suggests a level of solidarity across lines of difference that is weightier than mere tolerance. Now, we need to be careful here because tolerance is certainly noble and necessary as a norm. This is not an argument against tolerance. Still, tolerance in and of itself is not sufficient if our goal is to build societies in which we all live well with our deepest differences. Minimalist and arm's length versions of tolerance can actually run counter to that goal. The problems are threefold. First, to frame the imperative in terms of granting tolerance can suggest a posture of privilege or even condescension. But no one wants to merely be granted toleration, as if their presence is only grudgingly or tenuously accepted within the socio-political order. Instead, we all want to feel that our equal standing and inherent human dignity are universally respected.
Dr. Hoover continued to say that traditional approaches to pluralism, either a rigid, rule-based system or a watered-down relativism, fall short. Instead, covenantal pluralism emphasizes deep relationships alongside legal protections, fostering a culture where people of different faiths can engage meaningfully while maintaining their beliefs. One key takeaway: religious diversity is growing, not declining. Using Pew Research data, Dr. Hoover pointed out that some countries successfully balance low government restrictions on religion with low social hostilities, proving that pluralism can work in practice.
There are a lot of layers to the covenantal pluralism concept, but these two entities at least give us a sort of baseline indication of where the ground might be relatively more or less fertile for covenantal pluralism. So the latest report from Pew updates the annual scores through 2022, and for this presentation, I went through the data and recategorized the countries according to their low or low moderate combinations of 2022 scores on each index. And here's who makes the cut. A few quick takeaways from this data exercise. First of all, the slide is not blank. There are a lot of countries listed here, which means that we should not imagine that it's somehow impossible to combine low restrictions on freedom, religious freedom, with a social climate that is low in social hostilities. At least according to Pew, all these countries are managing to do it. Second, we don't have time to read through all these, but you have to take my word for it. Western countries are not overrepresented in these lists, which means that the potential for covenantal pluralism is not limited to a Western Christian majority club.
Surprisingly, these nations include not just Western democracies, but also Muslim majority countries like Senegal, Gambia, and Albania. Dr. Hoover also highlighted successful co-partnership models as real-world examples of covenantal pluralism in action. Organizations like LYNC, working in Central Asia, and Bridging the Gap, a U.S.-based initiative bringing together students from different worldviews, show that multi-faith collaboration is possible, even in deeply divided societies.
Bridging the Gap was founded in 2020, and as its first program, it brought together a class of students from Spring Arbor University, an evangelical college in Michigan, with students from Oberlin College, a school in Ohio associated with progressive values. Facilitated by Bridging the Gap, students from both campuses came together to learn about each other and how to work together across social and political divides. And since its initial pairing, the program has grown to engage over 50 campuses. A second example, this one operating internationally, is the organization Love Your Neighbor Community, or LYNC, where I serve as a senior fellow. LYNC is a US-based Christian NGO that has sponsored or co-sponsored many international conferences on freedom of religion or belief, seminars on cross-cultural religious literacy, and lots of different kinds of relationship building events involving local religious leaders and local government officials. And what's particularly remarkable about all this is that the primary region where LYNC is doing these programs is Central Asia. Muslim majority, former Soviet, very authoritarian. Challenging context for this kind of work, but LYNC nevertheless is successfully navigating this terrain with a relational diplomacy that's very much informed by the ethos of covenantal pluralism. The events that LYNC and its partners run are very carefully inclusive of participants from multiple faith traditions, and the content and methodology prioritize relationship building and cooperative engagement, both between different religions and between religions and government agencies. Also worth noting is that LYNC very often works with multiple co-sponsoring organizations that are coming out of different faith traditions themselves. So it's a kind of embodiment of covenantal pluralism in the co-sponsorship model. The leadership of such organizations often includes evangelical Christians, Catholics, Jews, Muslims, Mormons, Scientologists, and Sikhs. It's a motley crew, but it works because everyone is sharing a middle ground and a common conception of covenantal pluralism. So in conclusion, there is reason to believe that freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, and social harmony can be mutually reinforcing, even in contexts of wide religious difference. But it won't just happen. There is no institutional mechanism to guarantee an outcome, no end of history. It requires ongoing effort from the top down and the bottom up, from one generation to the next.
Dr. Hoover's lecture reinforced that loving one's neighbor, even amid deep theological differences, is central to social cohesion and religious freedom, making covenantal pluralism a necessary framework for our time.
So in conclusion, there is reason to believe that freedom of religion, freedom of conscience, and social harmony can be mutually reinforcing, even in contexts of wide religious difference. But it won't just happen. There is no institutional mechanism to guarantee an outcome, no end of history. It requires ongoing effort from the top down and the bottom up, from one generation to the next. As Robert Jouster, a political theorist and international relations professor at Redeemer University, has helpfully put it, covenantal pluralism should be thought of not just as a theory, but as a verb, as a continuous activity of covenanting pluralism. It's not an easy or simple thing, and does require all sides to give something to make the grand bargain work. But the process of covenanting pluralism ultimately promises progress towards freedom, fairness, and flourishing for all. Thank you. Look forward to your questions.
You can watch the full lecture on Gordon College's YouTube channel. We'll include a link in the show notes. You have been listening to LYNC Radio. Just a quick reminder that we depend on listeners like you to like, subscribe, and share this program. If this program has given value to you today, please take this quick and simple action. None of us can do this work alone, but we are strong together. I'm Jessica Eturralde. Thanks for listening.